So what is a community of practice? I think the definition is importantly quite broad. Essentially, it's a group of people and they meet to discuss and make progress on something that they share. So it might be a common concern, a problem that people are having, or a sort of a problem that you're trying to solve as a group, a value that you're trying to deliver. It might be a set of problems. So it could be, you know, a major issue has arisen at work and we need to get some people to kind of tackle that together. Or it could just be a topic of interest where you might be a little bit less action focused. You're not trying to solve anything particularly, but you do want to learn from each other around a particular topic. So that's quite broad, and it's really important, I think, to remember that when you're trying to set up a community of practice, if you've got a group of people who are coming together regularly to do one of these things, then that is a community of practice. So you might call it something different. It might not have a real structure, a strict structure around it. It might be a bit of a work in progress. It's still a community of practice. And so, like I said, there's a few sort of stages and a couple of steps that you can kind of follow. So just to quickly run through those, the first thing is starting small. So this is classic of anything in Agile. Don't try and go in and plan everything, make it perfect from the beginning. It's all about getting started rather than getting it perfect or getting it right from the beginning. You want to go where the energy is. So thinking about people who are interested and engaged around that subject, they're going to have interesting, engaging things to share, and they're going to be interested and engaged with you sharing what you've learned as well. Don't spend all of your time putting in those processes, those rules, those standards. Let those grow out of what you actually need rather than trying to predict that from the beginning. And I think one thing that comes up a lot for people that I've worked with at this stage is if you go in trying to make it too perfect at the beginning, you sort of automatically take on responsibility for running everything for the community of practice. And ideally that responsibility should be shared. So by going in with a sort of, let's all meet together and build those rules together, it's clear right from the very beginning you're modeling that sense of shared ownership, that it's not you that's going to deliver this for other people. The next stage is to actually solve a problem. So again, I think you'll see a lot of parallels with kind of Agile in general about you're not going in to sort of create a thing in isolation. It's all about really clearly identifying the problem that you're trying to solve and focusing around that. So really understand what are the shared challenges that you're facing, or what are the shared interests, what's the value you'd like to create, and agree what you want from the group. I think it's important to set those objectives really clear and upfront so that everyone's just on the same page about what you're trying to achieve. And also make that around real work. So if you're doing an Agile community of practice, you're probably not going to get as much value from meeting and talking about different parts of Agile than you are meeting and saying, this is how I've tried an Agile principle and here's how it went, or I'm trying to do this in an Agile way, but I'm not sure how. You're going to get a lot more value by using those real life examples. And you'll also be delivering your work at the same time. So you're not adding on top of work, you're delivering as you go. The important thing, as with Agile generally, is there isn't a right answer. There's not one way of doing a community of practice, and you're not going to be able to copy and paste that across different organizations or even different groups within an organization. Just make it work for you. The only way to do that and know it's doing that is by sort of setting and identifying that problem that you want to solve. Then the next stage is learning your way forward. So again, you'll recognize this from other areas of Agile, but the idea is that you're trying new things. You've got a problem to solve, have a go. If it works, do more of that. If it doesn't work, do something different. And so by doing this as well, you're creating more of a sense of that shared responsibility, that you're all creating this community of practice and what it is and how it works together. One of the kind of hard and fast rules, I'd say, though, is that it should be quite democratic and like egalitarian. It shouldn't be a matter of, seniority being involved. It really should be what works for the group and making sure that you grow and develop to suit that. However, you don't want it to be totally like anarchic, chaotic. So I think often people see Agile as almost like removing all the rules. but actually it's about making rules that are able to adapt and shift to your needs. So make sure you still have a structure in place, so you know what the session's going to run like, you know how you're going to use the time, and then you can decide whether that was the right way to do it, and you can adjust. Don't just have a meeting where everyone just sort of talks generally and it doesn't really go anywhere. But I sort of don't like the word failure, but I think it's important to say it's all about accepting failure, what we would traditionally consider to be failure. You know, this didn't do what we thought it would do, but use that to learn, make changes, and then move on and keep improving over time. Then the next one I think is about working together. So I've kind of mentioned this at the beginning, but I think this is how you continue the community of practice at this stage, is really finding those opportunities to collaborate, to learn how you might achieve what you were doing anyway, but you do it differently because you've done it together or you've done it with learnings from other places. Use the community of practice to support the work that you're doing, not to add more work for you to kind of try and fit into your busy schedule. And don't spend that time just trying to think of rules and processes for how you do things. You're then putting back into place all of those structures and you're losing the value of that kind of ebb and flow of working with other people. Then at that point, that's where you start taking it out to your teams. So you've started with the people who you know are really, really invested and interested. Start then taking it out beyond that initial group. That's, you know, that's your core pilot group where you can start to create something that has value. When you go beyond that, you might have people who are less obviously interested, but you can start demonstrating the value that you've seen. And that's a way of, you know, show, don't tell. Show people the value that you've created rather than going out and telling them you should join this community of practice. Share all the time, even when you don't think people are listening, because they probably are. And actually over time, they'll start to see how what you're doing isn't just another thing to kind of take up their time. And make it accessible to everybody. Even if you don't think that it's right for them, let them come along and decide that for themselves. And it's really interesting to know if they don't think it's right for them, why they don't think it's right for them. And then I would refer back to my objective as a group and kind of say, do they think that we're not doing one of our objectives that we said we would do? Or is it that they want to do something very different? Obviously, if they want something very different, that's fine. But if they wanted something you thought you were doing and they don't think you are, that's something that you can learn from as well. Then only grow when you need to. So that should not be a goal. It shouldn't be about getting as many people into the group as possible. It should be about as valuable a group as possible. So only really grow when you've either got an increased need, so more people are interested or would like to join, or, you know, there's more staff, or a new team has been created, or anything like that, or if there's a new problem. So it might be that you started off thinking of agile generally, but now you want to think about self-organizing teams, and that's something that's been implemented at your workplace. That's a new need, so you might want to expand your group to include people who are affected by that. So that's also links back to that solving a problem. Only grow when you've got a problem that you're actually going to be able to solve and be able to look back on and say, did we do what we wanted to do? So then just to quickly sort of summarize, just a reminder, there's no right way of doing it. It's all about making sure that you're being mindful and reflective throughout the process, and you're creating something that works for you, not something that meets the kind of template or standard that you've got in your head.